Welcome to the News Project Live, episode number 7, a look inside WNET, confronting protest, the virus, and financing hurdles. Our guest today is Neal Shapiro, President and CEO of WNET. Our hosts are Merrill Brown, CEO of the News Project, and Alex Leo, Head of Audience. The News Project Live is a weekly conversation with media industry experts and innovators about the future of news. Brought to you by the News Project. Without further ado, Merrill Brown and Alex Leo.
Good evening. I'm Merrill Brown from New York City. I'm the CEO of the News Project. I'm joined by Alex Leo tonight. Welcome to tonight's edition of the News Project Live. Thursday evenings, we bring together the smartest minds in media to talk about the news and the business challenges that make the future of news gathering and news organization so challenging. Tonight, we're going to jump into public television with one of the industry's most creative and innovative executives, Neal Shapiro of WNET Channel 13. WNET has a large and challenging local and national mission. What's the role of a public TV station like WNET in a digital world? What's the role of a public TV station at a time when the public is searching for local news as local newspapers continue to contract? We'll talk about the new world of public TV with Neal in a minute. At our company, the News Project, we're working to build technology and services to help small to medium-sized news organizations address product and business challenges. We provide a complete technology platform and the capabilities news organizations need to put them in a position to build audience and seek sustainable models. More on our work later in the program when Alex and I debrief. And please send us your questions for tonight's program. Good evening, Alex. How's everything on your road trip away from Washington?
Hi, Merrill. Everything's well. Just a reminder to everyone to share this post, tell us where you're watching from, tag your friends in the comments, and send us your questions, as Merrill said.
Thanks, Alex. Neal Shapiro's had a storied career in television. Since 2007, he has run WNET, the New York public television station. It is one of the most influential public media outlets in the country. They produce great performances, American Masters, PBS NewsHour Weekend, and in the New York area, Metro Focus and NJTV covering New Jersey, which they've expanded by buying innovative digital news site New Jersey Spotlight. Neal launched a weekly radio arts program, weekly arts program called NYC Arts, and WNET just acquired a radio station in Long Island, a station they've now paired with their own WLIW21. Neal spent 13 years as an ABC News producer before moving to NBC News, where he rose to become president of NBC News. During that period, I worked at MSNBC. I worked with Neal when he was executive producer of Dateline, and then I worked for Neal when he became president of NBC News in 2001. At NBC, he won 32 Emmys, 31 Edward R. Murrow Awards, and 3 Columbia DuPont Awards. That level of creativity and innovation now focuses on a much broader set of missions, including raising money. Much of Neal's notoriety around New York these days stems from his hosting of Pledge Drive fundraising segments. We're happy to see you in a much less structured moment, Neal, and we're happy to see you on our program. Welcome, Neal. Tell us a bit about lockdown life.
Well, no, it's great to be here. It's great to be here without an 800 number across my chest, which is and fundraising. Lockdown life is different. You know, if you had said to me even 4 months ago that I think we could run the entire company remotely, I would have said I don't think so. But I'm wrong. We run the entire company, and there's nobody in the building. It's a tribute to our technologists. It's a tribute to our hardworking staff. But it is a different challenge for management. Actually, never seen people being so dependent on this technology has a whole new set of challenges.
And how is news gathering working in that environment?
So our news gathering team, they have, in New Jersey, for instance, everybody, one of our anchors has turned her dining room into the anchor set. All the reporters were out there sometimes with their cameras, sometimes with their iPhones. They edit in the field. Sometimes they shoot things at home and do interviews where they're actually holding an iPad and shooting themselves holding the iPad. And then we email things to each other, and another editor puts it together, and off it goes to our master control. It's not the ideal way to do it, but I think the audience has proved that at the end of the day, it is really the content that counts. And they're very forgiving if the production values aren't what they used to be. especially if you're talking about big important stories like civil unrest or pandemics.
So let's talk about that in the current situation. What do the current protests mean for people running large media operations like yourself?
Well, I think they mean two things. On the one hand, especially for public television, it is a reminder to us that I think we can play an important role here. Part of what I think people are looking for is understanding. And there's so many of our stories that there's a heightened now interest in trying to understand the African-American experience that maybe wasn't there before. And I think we're offering content around that. I think there's a hunger for dialogue, which is not amped up, but kind of simple dialogue and exploring lots of issues on a longer term basis with longer probing interviews, and all our news programs do that. I'm an important company every night nationally. Our daily shows, our weekly shows, all do that. And then personally, I think just for me, this has been a time of really listening, realizing that we can and should do more. There needs to be change all across society, and that begins in our company. So lots of discussions with our employees, lots of thoughts about other things we need to do to make our company a more inclusive place than it's been.
Let's step back a little from the moment and take a bigger picture look, if we can, Neal. How do you see an organization like WNET in a multi-channel world dealing with multiple formats, competing with an enormous number of people for eyeballs, underwriting, and membership support? How do you view it?
You know, Merrill, it makes me kind of yearn back to the old days when you just did television, because it was so much easier. You had to be on TV. Now I think the challenge is to be everywhere the audience is. And as you know, the audience is fragmented, the platforms are fragmented. And it also means not just we need to do the work we do, but we need to make sure it's on all the different platforms. And sometimes that means editing or doing it differently to conform to each platform. That's been a change in what we're about. On the other hand, it means we're reaching a whole different range of people. And if I look at the people who watch or consume our content, our TV audience is older. The people who watch us online and digital are younger. The people who watch a lot of our social media are younger than that. And I think the good thing is, my fear used to be, as people got older, they don't just suddenly become opera fans. Right? They don't suddenly do for that. So we need to make sure that we were exposing younger viewers to the type of things we're doing. And that's really helped us do that. So a lot of our great work on great performances or nature or lots of our important documentaries, American Masters, are now having second, third, fourth lives as people find it. As we take sometimes segments of it and use it to be on the news of the day. So it's a bigger challenge, but a bigger opportunity.
And where does digital fit? I don't think most of our viewers think of WNET Channel 13 as a digital company, but of course you are.
Right. And of course, you're exactly right. We didn't start out that way. Now first, everything we do has a digital component. But I'd say the biggest change we made, just to get into that, was we wanted to launch a 24/7 channel on arts and culture called All Arts. And the old think would have been, let's just do a TV channel. And we've done that. But the new thing is, this has a whole separate life, a whole digital component to it. And when we launched it, we did a lot of focus groups of people. We found out our older audience really wanted a TV experience, and our younger audience wanted a digital experience. And our older audience was interested in 1.5, 2-hour documentaries, and our younger audience, not even younger, but a digital audience, was interested in content they could shape, was interested in content that was shorter, was interested in content that was on the news. And the fact is, by succeeding in both, I think we've increased our TV audience and we've increased our digital audience.
And speaking of audience, I want to say hi to Stefan Kaplan and Aparna, two of our regular viewers who we love, and we will look at their questions in a little bit. But Neal, I wanted to ask you, public media has long benefited from building membership programs, a model for many other news gathering organizations. What's the state of WNET's membership efforts right now?
Well, it's changing a lot. The thing that is constant about it, and it's interesting that even for-profit companies are understanding, there's a different relationship you have when you're a member of something, when you feel like you're helping to make something possible. So in our case, it's often content you can get for free, but being a member of it is a different experience. What we're changing now is the old model was you would be a member and we would send you a CD or a T-shirt or a tote bag. Now there are many different ways you can be a member and many different experiences you can get. So sometimes membership means getting more access to content. We launched something called Passport, which is kind of our public television version of Netflix, right? You pay a certain amount per month and you get to a deep dive in our archives. That's a different way of establishing membership. But I think the thing that's there that makes it work, if it's successful, is to remind people membership is not just an experience where you consume something. There's a deeper relationship. You buy into the mission. And I think that's the difference between just membership and consuming something else.
That means a ton of sense. And Merrill, speaking of membership, can you tell our audience at home a little bit more about TNP and what it does?
Certainly, Alex. So at the News Project, we have built a platform that hosts news sites, news and information sites in the United States and hopefully soon around the world. We provide people not just the technology they need, we provide them with templates and a complete set of everything you need to start a news site. If Neal wanted to start nealnews.com, and I hope he will someday, we would be able to give him everything he needs and have him up and running in a very short period of time. And we not only provide technology, as this slide says, we provide people with the analytics they need. We provide our customers with analysis of audience, which is one of Alex Leo's specialties. We give them the whole suite of services that allows them to get to what's most important these days, as Neal was just explaining, get to that sustainable and hopefully profitable business model. So please contact us if you have questions about the News Project and our work. We'd be happy to meet with you and take your questions. You can reach me at Merrill@thenewsproject.net, and you can reach Alex at thenewsproject.net. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Merrill. So going back, Neal, to what we were just talking about with membership, what does it take to keep growing? And what do you think news entrepreneurs can learn from your efforts around securing members?
Well, the first thing I think is obviously data is very important. Data can tell you when you succeed and when you don't. You can be flexible and you can try different things. I think for us, the big thing is to keep pushing yourself about the content you have, the way you can shape it, and your relationship to the audience. And keep thinking about how you can probe different ways to make that connection happen. We've done a lot more on the digital front and been more successful than I ever thought we would. We've reached people who didn't necessarily think that they were coming to public television, but our content was a way in. And I think that's an interesting way to think about. Sometimes you appeal to people because the organization is what they like. Sometimes it's the brand. That's what they like. And sometimes you hook them with just a bit of content, which leads them down that road. And I think a lot of what we're finding in public television is, especially for people who are younger and finding us, is they may not have grown up watching us, but they get exposed to an interesting documentary. They find a front line they never saw. They see an Amanpour interview that really intrigues them. They want to go deeper. And they realize that the amount of content we have is so vast, and I'd argue in a lot of ways things that we have that others don't, that really leads them to deepen their relationship with us.
We've gotten a hello from Peter Krasilovsky, a frequent viewer of our show and a friend from Ashland, Oregon, where he's a viewer of Southern Oregon PBS. Thanks, Peter, for stopping by tonight. Neal, tell us how, as the membership program has evolved, the revenue mix at Channel 13 has evolved. It probably has changed considerably over your 13 years there.
It clearly has. I mean, the biggest source from all PBS stations is viewers like you. That is definitely true. But it used to be that viewers like you were almost always all about the pledge drive, right? Which we would do, and almost always, or many times, just about the stuff you could buy, about the DVD or the shirt or something like that. And that's changed a lot. Digital started very, very small, and digital continues to grow. And in these recent times, as people have been home, we're seeing it shift again. I don't know what the post-pandemic viewing will be like, but right now people have a lot more time to watch. And we're getting more people who are finding us digitally. We're getting more people who renew, who are lapsed members. I think now they're home again and realizing how important this is. And I think that ties into three things I think that are resonating with people. One is the political cycle, and the need to find news that's trustworthy, reliable, not hyped up. And I think that's what PBS is about. Second, I think it's a place for people looking to escape. There's so much stuff where occasionally you just go, I don't want to think about what's happening in the news. I really need time to get away from that. And whether it's British dramas or the best science on television or important history, unburdened by commercials, that's a separate experience. And the third thing we're getting a lot of support on is ancillary services. So we do a lot in education. When kids couldn't go to school, we worked with teachers, and we brought back something we used to do years and years ago. We worked with teachers to teach classes from their living room to yours. And we did 5 hours in New Jersey and 3 hours in New York. That's been spectacular success. It's like spinning up 300 classrooms. And that's had a lot of people giving just from a sense of mission. They may not be consuming it, but they like what we're doing. They realize we're helping children. And that's brought in more revenue.
And a couple of months ago, you announced a program with New York City. Tell us about that on schools.
Yes. So we went to the Board of Education, right? And we said we'd like to do more, especially now as we get to the summer, because the big issue, as you know, is always summer slide. In New York City, it's particularly important because there may be an issue about pools being closed, camps being closed, especially some of the things that were done for disadvantaged or under-resourced kids. Those may be canceled. And the one thing about television is everybody has it. There's still homes that may not have internet, but they have television. So we're doing kind of a camp TV idea, which is to say it's learning in a fun way. It's like going to camp with your favorite camp counselor. And we partner with other nonprofits in New York City. So there could be bedtime reading, there could be pottery, there could be lots of things you would do in the fun side of camp. Our host is a guy who's done some work on Broadway who's really into learning. And then we partner that with some of the other classes that we've been teaching over the spring. So the thought is it's a good, safe place for parents, a good way for kids to catch up that doesn't feel like homework, but keeps education front and center.
Great. Neal, what is it like managing 400 plus people working from home? I know you said that you had thought that it wasn't possible, but what are some of the challenges that you've come across and some of the highlights?
I think the biggest challenge, and the time is very hard, right? Because you can't I used to get so much work done just walking down the hall and saying to somebody, can we do this? Or just pulling people together for a quick meeting or having an idea hit my head and just wander down and ask somebody. And now everything has to be purposeful and directed and calls booked. So that takes a lot of time. But I think the hardest thing is that you just can't be with people. You can't see them. And so this is such a painful time. The pandemic alone is hard enough. And now I think people are going through now. The George Floyd case has brought up something which is much deeper, right? Mm-hmm. And I think surfaced a lot of things that people maybe not people like me were not as familiar with, to realize just how much pain many of our workers have been in. And you can only do so much in this kind of communication.
Right.
There's something very sterile about even on a one-on-one on a Zoom call. You can't look into people's eyes. You can't just walk into the office and close the door and say, tell me how you feel. You can't just say, you know what, I just think you ought to go home because they're already at home. But I find it very, very hard to connect to people in a real personal way.
We have a question I'll take, Alex, from Peter Kreisky, our viewer and a very widely known media consultant. Peter asks, now that viewing isn't strictly tied to the daily and weekly schedule, Neal, what unmet needs have emerged and how has your business model evolved?
Well, I think part of it has made us much more flexible. One of the big things that we've had, which is a bit, we solved, but if you're a PBS viewer, you know for a long time how sacrosanct the PBS viewer guide was. And people were very reluctant to change it. And when the pandemic happened, we changed some. And when the next wave stories hit, we changed it a lot. So part of it is what can we just jump on and do things and change the schedule? The other thing is trying to find platforms in which people can connect. So there are ways in which people watch our programs, and we're finding digital ways in which they can connect. On All Arts, we're doing groups where people can connect and interact with us. We try to be much more open to having content and ideas which can bubble up and get on television. So I think we're slowly knocking down a lot of those walls. Walls were not necessarily built to be hostile. Walls which were built because that's the way we did things. And we were so concerned about quality and everything must match the highest quality PBS. You know, a great example is there's a big PBS series called American Portrait, which is really just user-generated content. And it started out last year to celebrate what's it mean to be an American. And we asked people to submit, we ran lots of promos to do it. But what it's become now is sort of a national pulse about what people are going through. And it's a platform which people can watch and submit content and listen to other people's content. And then it's, at the end of the day, it's going to form TV programs. But it's kind of a reverse image the way we used to do things. And it's very exciting. You know, the content bubbles up. It really bubbles up from the viewers.
So we have a question. Aparna emailed me a question in. How much of a focus is there on education and PBS learning when you create something like America in Black and Blue? And how does your team collaborate with other stations if it does?
So on everything we do, we have an education department, and part of their job is to take all the programs we have and chop it up into little bits and try to align it with learning schedules. So all our big programs, Nature, American Masters, and so forth, do that. American Black and Blue, and I'm glad they referenced it, was a special we did in, I think, 8 days to say, what's the relationship between African Americans and the police force? And ironically, we did this show about 3 years ago when Bueno Castillo was killed in Minneapolis. And we did that story, and now George Floyd was killed five miles away. So we did it again. What made that show a little bit different, and one of the things we're trying to do to knock down walls, is we said this is not just going to be a WNET production. So there were parts that we produced. There were parts from Independent Lens, an independent production series. There were parts from Amanpour and Company. We're not really a network in the conventional sense, but we should act more like one. And one more example, I think, of what's happening here is people realizing we need to find ways to work together. Nobody cares what the station credit is at the end of the show. What they care about is what's the best show you can make.
Neal, let's talk about the very high-profile world of television news more broadly now. When you were president of NBC News, you were both a broadcast executive and then a cable executive, running MSNBC as part of your portfolio. MSNBC is a different channel today than it was during your time overseeing it. How do you see the state of television news, and are you troubled by the news broadcasts carrying so much what I'll call ideology?
Well, I think from democracy point of view, it's bad for democracy if everybody can create their own media worlds where all they hear and see is content that reinforces their points of view. And I think part of that's what become on cable. I think they're well done and they're very smart people, but I worry that they're not dissenting voices. And if you talk to people who just watch Fox, for instance, and you talk to people who just watch MSNBC, for instance, they're two entirely different worlds. And no matter what you believe is right, I think minds only get changed and understandings are only reached if you're at least open to other points of view. So I worry about that. Merrill, if you study the old days of newspapers or even broadcast television, the idea was that they kind of had a hew down the middle because you needed a wide range of people and you couldn't really make money at the margins. The money to be made was at the middle. And now I think what we've learned and what cable has shown is you can do quite well at the margins, and there are bigger margins. But if you shape your content to a particular point of view, you can be quite profitable. I don't know that it's good for the country.
And where do you see public TV fitting into the future of TV news? You're expanding certainly around New York. You've brought, I guess, what amounts to a national news operation to New York to do the PBS NewsHour weekend. What's public TV's role?
Well, I think our role is to fill that middle ground for people to say, I really want to watch something doesn't have a spin to it. It's something that really gives, and something that's not is going to have time. I think the two values of public media are we don't have an agenda. We do our best to really honestly try to play things right down the middle and try to be open to other points of view. And that we're kind of immune from some of the pressures of commercials, which means our stories are much longer, our interviews are much longer. And I think in these times, in these complicated times and heated times, yes, there's a place to go for people who just want the fire, but there's also a place for people who want the light. And I think that's what public media does.
Would you like to see public television do more in news? Yes, there's an outstanding program called NewsHour, and you produce it and host it on weekends. Could public television be doing more? Could WNET be doing more?
Look, I think one of the exciting things about media, where we're going, and all the different platforms we talked about, and the future of TV, which is going to be even more channels, more powerful signals, is the room to do a lot more of everything. I think that everything we do, I'd love to do deeper dives in news and documentaries and arts and history and science and kids. As people get to choose what they want, we can give them more choices.
Neal, we have another question coming in from Aparna on Facebook. Is there a way back for the GOP and the perception of CPB making it a fundraising cut target, forgive me?
Well, there has been a pattern for as long as I've been in public television, which is that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is a convenient target for Republicans, I would say the right, to pick up and go after. Mm-hmm. Part of it, I think they say it's ideological, and I would say it's not. It's often examples cited that it's the kind of waste we need to go after. Now, when you look at it, it's like $1.35 per taxpayer.
Right.
0.001% of the federal. You can't even see it on the pie chart. So it's clearly not worth going after if you want to save a lot of money. I don't know where things are going to go because I don't know what the political world will look like. The reason it doesn't get cut is at the end of the day, Republicans and Democrats, red and blue states, appreciate public media. And a lot of our programs appeal to lots of people. So I think it's been a convenient political target, and every time we get targeted, we fight back. It would be delightful if out of all of this, one thing that would come is we would find some common ground and realize this is not worth fighting over anymore. We ought to support it.
We have a question from a public broadcasting colleague of yours, Neal, Jim Schachter, who runs public broadcasting in New Hampshire now. What's WNET doing to address the news needs of younger people? Jim's point of view is that public funds will go farther on radio and the web than on producing more TV. What do you think?
I think it's not one or the other. I think the world we're shifting to is now multimedia producing, so that we put Spotlight and NJTV together. We put a digital news gathering, a TV news gathering, say, could we form something new? And we have. And I think what you're seeing is journalists now being able to work on multi-platforms. I think the answer is we should do more on every single platform. Jim's absolutely right that just doing TV is a bad idea. But I think the fact that there's still something about video is still the coin of the realm. TV is still a great experiential medium. There's still people who say, I want to sit back and lost and watch something on a big screen. And there's a place for news in that.
And that's an excellent segue from to the next question I wanted to ask you, which is about local news. People have been waiting for public media for years to step up and fill the holes left by the collapse of many daily local newspapers. Public media is doing more and more, including, as we have mentioned, buying things like New Jersey Spotlight, an outstanding local news publication in New Jersey. You've picked up the pace at NJTV, something that I know something about, and now on Long Island. So you are trying, it seems, to fill those holes. Where's it going?
First, we're delighted where we are, but we're still out of the starting blocks. I do think there's a big place for this. As a guy who worked in newspapers myself, I bemoan the loss of local newspapers. I think we need more watchdogs at every level, and I think public media can be one of those watchdogs. I think this is an evolving process. You can see some of the foundations starting to support more of this. There's a little more support for that. One of the issues I think we have throughout the news ecosphere is that we taught people for a long time that news content was free. Mm-hmm. And that's a hard lesson to unlearn, and to remind people that even at small amounts, we really do need you. That's why the membership model is interesting as it applies to this. But I see lots more startups. I think hyperlocal is the future, and I think partnerships are the future. So I'm excited where it could go.
We have a comment from Roberta Oster from Richmond, Virginia, saying, Neal Shapiro, great to see you on the show. Thank you for your lifetime commitment to quality journalism.
You know what's great about this show? If you've been on television, if you've been in the media for a long time, the people will find you and you get great emails like that. So thanks, Roberta. Good to see you.
Right. Let's stick with local for a minute, Neal, if we can. What next? So do you imagine starting more digital news sites like Spotlight? Is that a model? Will we see Long Island Spotlight or Manhattan Spotlight? Where is the local initiative headed?
Well, I think one of the things we've talked about when we started this, we think there's a future in expanding the notion of Spotlight, the idea of getting print/digital reporters together with broadcasters, and whether that's elsewhere in Manhattan or Long Island, we're totally looking at that. I think the next year to focus on how we can put TV and radio together. I think part of what's exciting about this new world is for so long, every content stayed just in its lane. TV was for TV, radio was for radio, print was for print, digital was for digital. Now we're seeing it doesn't have to be that way. Now we're seeing together we can partner, and podcasts are for podcasts. Now we can realize we can do lots of different things. So I think we're going to play with some of the toys we have, but I wouldn't have started down this road if I didn't think there was more we could do and more good we could do.
We have a question from Peter Kreisky. Given the extreme importance of public service media to democracy, shouldn't PBS be marketing itself more aggressively?
Yeah, we should. And part of the issues that we have is, like a lot of other nonprofits, there's so much we need to do, so much content we want to produce. And in all our things, honestly, the first thing that always gets cut is marketing. Right. We've tried to fix that. We tried to stay more dedicated to it. And we think we have a great message. We're the most trusted brand in America. We think we reach a lot of people. And we're trying to do more digitally about that. But I think you're absolutely right. And now I do think there's a time when the importance of news seems more important than ever before. And the idea of bringing the country together around anything seems important. And I think it's worth remembering that in addition to all the things PBS does, if you can bring the country together and we can watch Ken Burns on country music and find commonality in that, that's great. If we can watch Jackie Robinson and find commonality in that, that's great too. That is one other important thing that we should do, is for all our differences, and there are things that bring us together as Americans, and that's another thing that PBS can bring that others can't.
Neal, one thing that among many that the three of us in this conversation share is that we're all entrepreneurs. And it's encouraging, I'm sure, to Alex, and it certainly is to me, to see you as being as entrepreneurial as you are. You even just bought a radio station. Tell us how it is that a local public TV station buys radio stations 80 miles away from the home base.
Right.
Well, it takes a couple of things. First, it takes, in my case, a board which is incredibly supportive and is open to that kind of entrepreneurship. I think we help make the case that, that you can't just stand still in any business. And especially in the media business, you can't stand still. Too much is happening. I mean, think about this. The platforms are changing. The content is changing. The people who watch things are changing, and it's all changing at the same time. And if you're not constantly open to different ways in which you can reach people, it's a mistake. I think we made the case that other stations have partnered with NPR stations. This was Long Island's only NPR station. WLIW is the only public television station. It was a natural way to fit, but it was also thinking, once again, what are the possibilities? How can we do more? And I think we're all excited about it.
And what do you imagine the cross-platform nature of that likely to be?
Well, I think a lot of issues, I think both the interviews and the reporting can live in the different platforms. You know, part of the reason we started Metro Focus, which is our daily news interview show in New York, and called it Metro Focus, was to make the point that sometimes issues involve the whole metropolitan area, and they're best looked at around how different communities solve it. So while I may not live in Long Island, I have real interest in what they do about soil erosion.
Right.
Because where I live, that could be the same issue. Or I certainly care about how different communities are dealing with their police force, because as we know, that's now a common issue. I care about innovative ideas that come out of Long Island that could affect life in New York City and vice versa. So I think you can help to build community. And if you can make those connections in the way you arrange content, I think you both enlighten the viewer. And then again, you remind us that communities can be brought together in different ways.
To the audience, we have time for just a couple more segments here and questions for Neal. Please send them along and let us know where you are in the country or in the world watching us today. Neal, what is your relationship at this point in time with PBS, and how engaged are you with them? We know it's not the traditional network affiliate relationship like you were used to at NBC and ABC, but
Right.
What is the nature of you and PBS these days?
Well, we're partners with PBS, but in a lot of different ways. We're partners with PBS because we're the biggest market in the country. We're partners with PBS because we're now among the biggest content producers in the country for them. So sometimes they fund some of our programs, they schedule some of our programs. Sometimes our job is to push out programs that other people produce. But Paula Kruger, who runs it, who came from WNET, is a tremendous leader. And the other thing that makes PBS interesting as a network is it really is a place open to different ideas. When I worked at networks tend to be very top down, and affiliates are told what to do. And there's often not a lot of interaction between the affiliates and the mothership. PBS is a different place. Paula is open to those ideas, and a lot of ideas do come bubbling up. The other thing that is fun about it is we've been able to do things just with stations ourselves. So we just did a graduation show for all people who missed graduation, and we did it as a segmented show. So we fed it out and said to people, here, we put in high school kids, you can put in your own high school kids. We put in some elected officials, you put in your own elected officials. So now for very little money, every station can do their own customized version. And we've tried that with other different formats. That would be hard to work at the commercial level. You can do it in public television.
Where are you going to be in 5 years, Neal?
I think I'll be at WNET, but 5 years older.
Well, we can guarantee the second part of that. How about a larger vision for where y'all are going?
I hope that in 5 years we will look back and say the things I talked about tonight were just the tip of the iceberg. That we've innovated. We have to innovate to survive. We have many more platforms, many more forms of content. The other thing, in 5 to 7 years, there's something called ATSC 3.0, which is going to be the most powerful television signal ever, and will increase our capacity 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So we could have 18 channels, and you can imagine what the possibilities could be for that.
Neal, it's been great having you. I think we've covered an enormous amount of territory here. You do every day and what you do at WNET. I want to thank you for joining us, and thank you for your commitment to local news, which is something we care deeply about, and that not enough large organizations are actually focused on in the same way you are. So thank you for doing that as New Yorkers, and we we hope you'll stay in touch and keep us posted.
That was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Neal.
Thank you.
Alex, everybody, thank you very much for participating in today's show. We got great questions we see up in front of us. Coming up in a month, actually, is another really important and exciting executive and public meeting in New York and on the national scene. She is Goli Sheikh-Ol-Islami, and Goli is the relatively recently appointed CEO of WNYC, which is the sister channel to WNET, in that they're the large, dominant public radio station in New York. Goli has a lot to say on the future of public radio and where WNYC is going. We look forward to having her in a few weeks. We're going to take a little hiatus, and Alex and I will join you in several weeks, including the July 16th program we're happy to announce today. Alex, a closing thought?
Thank you, Neal, and thank you, Merrill. This has been a great conversation. I want to thank Peter, Roberta, Stefan, Aparna, and Peter Kreisky as well, who joined us. And please keep us questions coming when we come back on the 16th.
We will see everyone soon. We'll be back hopefully before the 16th. I know we will. But the hiatus goes in effect tonight. And those of you taking a holiday during this difficult time, as Alex is fortunate enough to be doing, happy holiday and be safe. Thank you for joining us again tonight, and thank you for watching the News Project Live.